Adam Schiff spent 8 years ruining lives with his words, but one single piece of paper just silenced him forever. The clicking of the pen cap finally ceased. For 8 long years, Adam Schiff remained the most articulate speaker in whatever room he entered. But now, that polished voice choked up, faded, and perished on just one word. He aligned the solitary piece of paper with the table's edge, yet his trembling hand could not keep it straight. Directly opposite him sat a calm guy holding a dark binder, someone who hadn't elevated his tone a single time this whole morning. A pair of residences were listed on that document, and Schiff had pledged under oath that every single one was his sole residence. However, that revelation arrived later. Initially, we got the lecture. Let us be truthful regarding who is actually sitting opposite me, Senator Adam Schiff stated. Flashing the specific grin he reserved exclusively for the media. A rural attorney from Louisiana who constructed a profession taking legal action to mandate prayer inside public classrooms, who labored for an organization the justice system has smacked down dozens of times, and who currently preaches to the rest of America regarding the Constitution. You are no constitutional expert, Mr. Speaker. You are merely a televangelist who happens to possess a legal license. Chuckles drifted through the seats behind him. He allowed it to linger, then leaned closer to the mic. And the voters who put you here, the individuals who still assume the previous election was rigged, the folks who think a country of 300 million should be managed from one lone church down in Shreveport, they are owed the facts, too. Therefore, here is the genuine issue the American public is demanding today. He executed a slight turn toward the lenses, a well-rehearsed angle. Why is a guy held on a leash by Christian fundamentalists permitted anywhere close to the confidential intel of the United States? Mike Johnson didn't respond instantly. The chamber had packed out before sunrise. Protesters had queued up in the freezing air for spots, and a large portion of them arrived to witness a speaker be dismantled. The media benches were completely full, laptops flipped open, and multiple articles regarding this exact morning were already half finished. Titles included, "Standing by strictly for the soundbites." Schiff had strolled in exactly like a guy walks into a space he has already conquered, simply because he had conquered this precise room previously, more instances than he could tally. He had buried much sharper individuals than the guy sitting across from him. He understood it, and he desired every single person tuning in to realize he understood it. He rested completely motionless at the middle of the panel. A dark binder shut directly before him, his fingers intertwined above it. He wasn't grinning. He wasn't scowling. He carried the expression of a guy who had sat through lengthier introductions than this, inside courtrooms that carried much more weight. When he ultimately talked, the crowd had to lean forward to hear it. "Senator, you have spoken a massive amount regarding truthfulness over the past 4 minutes. I would like to challenge you on that." He flipped the binder to the initial marker. He didn't raise it up for the lenses. He just read, "The 20th of March, 2017, you stand at a mic and you declare to the American public, and I am quoting your words, that the proof of collusion is," your exact phrase, "in plain sight, not concealed, not restricted, in plain sight." He glanced up. "Do you recall stating that?" The grin concealed a shift behind it. It started to recalibrate. "I recall being correct regarding a massive amount this institution refused to. It is a basic inquiry." Johnson's tone did not elevate, it sharpened. "Did you inform the nation the proof was in plain sight? Yes or no?" "Yes. And I support every." "Thank you." Johnson flipped the sheet. "Then I am going to accept your statement. Before this session concludes, I am going to present this panel everything that sat in plain sight. The spying you approved, the vote your personal chamber cast against you, and a document near the conclusion where you pledged under penalty of perjury that 2 separate houses across 2 separate states were both the sole residence you possessed. He allowed that to linger. You burned 8 years labeling other guys as con artists, Senator. I brought the dossier on you, so let us review it together. For the initial instance that morning, the chuckling ceased completely. The protesters who had queued before sunrise adjusted in their chairs. The journalists quit typing their half-finished articles and started observing the room instead, because journalists can sense a narrative pivot beneath them, exactly like a captain senses the breeze shift. And this specific one had just pivoted. Schiff's grin remained visible. It had just stopped signifying anything at all. If you just witnessed a sitting senator get handed his own statements across a hearing desk, smash that like button right now, because we are solely on the initial page of this binder. He placed his palm flat against the exposed marker, exactly how a prosecutor highlights a piece of evidence he plans to revisit. Let us kick things off with what you did to a regular civilian named Carter Page. For the absolute first time that morning, Adam Schiff grabbed for the lid of his ink pen. He clicked it one time. Carter Page is not a guy half this crowd will shed tears for, Johnson stated. He consulted for a Trump campaign. He communicated with Russians. That made him a simple target, and you comprehended, better than anybody in Washington, exactly how to grab a simple target and turn him into a warning. He did not glance at any scripts. He had operated as a trial lawyer for almost 2 decades before he campaigned for any office, and the main lesson he absorbed was that the guy who relies on his scripts has already forfeited the courtroom. So, here is exactly what occurred. In basic English. For the citizens tuning in from home, back in 2016, the most dominant surveillance apparatus on the globe was unleashed upon a private American civilian, not a convicted spy. A civilian, 4 distinct times, a covert tribunal authorized monitoring him. He halted. The solitary noise inside room 110 was the faint snap of the pen cap. After that, the Inspector General of the Justice Department went back and reviewed those requests, word for word. Do you realize what he discovered, Senator? The Inspector General's file has been described in a variety of 17. Johnson dropped the figure down like a solid weight. 17 mistakes and missing facts. 17 separate times that covert tribunal was fed something false or hidden from something it required to understand. A federal magistrate, the head judge of that specific tribunal, stated that the agency had, her exact phrase, misled the court regarding an American who was never indicted for a single offense. He permitted that to sit there for a second, and when he vocalized again, his pace slowed down. For the folks at home, consider what that signifies for a moment. Imagine if it was you. The government decides to scan your letters, monitor your phone calls, track where you travel and who you associate with, 4 separate times over. Relying on a warrant, a federal magistrate would later declare, was constructed on claims that were not factual. And at the conclusion of it all? 0. No indictment. No offense. Merely a citizen with his entire existence flipped inside out, simply because he was a useful name at a useful time. He peered up. That can occur to a guy in this nation. Senator, it occurred to that specific one, and the statement you made about it, the document you attached your signature to, claimed that the whole thing was spotless. He pulled out an additional sheet, though he did not read it immediately. And the item you flashed at the lenses for 3 years, the item you logged into the official archives of this Congress on that particular March morning, it carried a title. It was a dossier. A stack of unproven allegations assembled by an overseas agent, funded via a network of attorneys by the campaign of your preferred candidate's rival. Opposition digging, Senator, purchased and paid for. That is what it represented the moment it was drafted, and that is exactly what it remained. After Mueller, After Durham, after everybody. You did not inform the nation it was opposition digging. You did not inform them who funded it. You stood beside a mic and logged it into the archives of the United States, acting as if a direct witness had testified to it. He placed the sheet down. He looped back to the figure, because the figure was the concept he needed them to drag home. He had selected it deliberately. Schiff was a guy who boasted about his exactness, about placing the punctuation flawlessly. 17 was the figure that twisted that exact pride into an indictment. And where exactly were you while that was going down? You were the singular guy in the nation whose duty was to prevent exactly this type of abuse of covert authority against a regular civilian. That occurred on your shift, and instead of shutting it down, you drafted a memo, you dropped it to the masses, and you informed America the entire operation was spotless. I do not command the FBI, Mr. Speaker. Schiff's tone grew harsh once more. I did not draft those requests. The mistakes you keep parading around belonged to the Bureau. You are attempting to drape a federal department's blunders around the collar of a guy who did not commit them. False, Johnson stated. I am draping your personal memo around your collar, Senator. You are correct that you didn't draft the warrant. However, you reviewed it. You observed what sat inside it, and then you marched out before 300 million citizens and swore to them it was spotless. The Bureau committed the mistakes. You pitched them. That is not their signature on the guarantee. It is yours. He flipped the sheet. So here is the segment I need the folks at home to grip tightly. You did not merely approve it in silence. You appeared on broadcasts for 3 solid years, and you stared right into the lens and told them the proof of a president colluding with an overseas entity sat in plain sight. You stated you had viewed it personally. He intertwined his fingers. Robert Mueller burned 2 years hunting for the exact thing you claimed was already sitting in plain sight. He did not uncover a criminal plot. John Durham burned 4 additional years hunting. He did not uncover it either. A pair of prosecutors on opposite extremes of everything. And neither guy could locate the exact thing you pledged you had already viewed. And right here, Schiff located his footing. He leaned forward, and the tone returned, heavy and confident. Mueller recorded multiple connections between the campaign and Russian operatives. Dozens. I never one time alleged a criminal plot inside a courtroom. I stated the behavior was unpatriotic. I stated the country deserved to know, and I was right to demand we find out. You can mock that, Mr. Speaker. History will not. It connected. A murmur traveled across the Democratic side of the gallery, the initial noise of life they had made. A staffer nodded. For one suspended breath, the chamber recalled that this man had walked into rooms built to bury him and walked out bigger than he came in. Johnson did not accelerate. Whenever a witness finally throws the punch he's been loading, you let it swing through the air before you answer it. Contacts, he stated quietly. Contacts is not the word you used. Senator, you didn't tell America there were contacts worth a look. You told America the collusion was in plain sight. Those are not the same sentence. And you, of all people, a former prosecutor, know exactly how far apart they sit. He tapped the page. The evidence was in plain sight, you said. You were half right. It just wasn't where you pointed. And then he set the courtesy aside. Just for a moment, you didn't say it might be true. You didn't say you had a suspicion worth chasing. You said you'd seen it, and families all over this country stopped speaking to each other over what you told them you'd seen. Neighbors turned on neighbors for years over a thing 2 prosecutors went looking for and could not find. That silence is the sound of a man hearing his own words walk back across the table at him. If a moment like that is worth your time, type the word 17 inches. The comments so we know to keep going. In the third row, a reporter who had been typing all morning stopped, read something on her own screen, gathered her bag, and walked out the back. She did not return. Johnson was already turning the tab. And while we're talking about things you said weren't true, he said, let's talk about the man who knew first. The fall of 2019, Johnson said. A complaint comes in that becomes the first impeachment of a president in 20 years. You ran it. You were its prosecutor, its architect, its face on every screen in America. And you were asked on national television a plain question. Had your committee, your staff, anyone working for you, had any contact with the whistleblower before that complaint arrived? Do you remember your answer? I remember answering carefully, as anyone in my... You said no. The last of the courtesy went out of Johnson's voice. And it wasn't true. Your staff had been in contact before the complaint. You knew the man who knew first. And you told the country you didn't, not under torture, not to save a child. You told a needless lie on a Tuesday about a thing that would have been forgotten by Friday, because you decided the truth was whatever served you in the next 90 seconds. He set both hands flat on the binder. And understand what that lie touched, Senator. That complaint became an impeachment. An impeachment is the gravest thing this House can do to a sitting president. It is supposed to be the one process in all of American government that nobody can call rigged, because the stakes are simply too high for anything less than clean hands. And you ran it. You were its prosecutor, and the whole time you were standing on a fact you'd told the cameras wasn't so. You took the most solemn instrument we have, and you started it with a lie about where it came from. Here it was. The first time all morning, the litigator's calm cracked open into something hot. That's the pattern, Senator. You weren't careless. You weren't confused. Every single time, you decided the story was worth more than the fact. You did it to a citizen. You did it to a court. And you did it to every working man and woman who turned on the television and believed the serious fellow in the dark suit. Because, surely, a man that calm, a man that precise, a man who never raised his voice, surely that man wouldn't just make it up. He let it land. They trusted the costume. You wore it like a man who knew exactly what it bought. If you have ever sat at your kitchen table and felt like the serious men on television were lying straight to your face, this is the moment you've waited 8 years to hear. Subscribe right now so the back half finds you, because it gets worse for him from here. Johnson turned the next tab. The 21st of June 2023. The House of Representatives did a thing it has done to only a handful of members in 100 years. It censured you. 213 to 209. They made you stand in the well of the chamber while it was read to your face. The third member censured this century. Not a tweet, not a press release, a vote. The institution you served for 2 decades put its name to one, finding that you had misled the American people. And now, Adam Schiff threw his hardest punch of the morning. He turned full to the cameras, found them by instinct, and the famous voice filled the room. That censure was a party-line stunt, and every honest person here knows it. 213 Republicans. Not one Democrat. Not one. No trial, no evidence. A punishment for being effective against a man your party has spent a decade shielding. And this? He swept a hand at the binder, at Johnson, at the whole room. The real question the American people should be asking is why a sitting Speaker of the House is running the personal revenge of a president who has wanted me destroyed since the day I held him to account. I have not been charged with one single thing. You know why? Because there is nothing there. This is not a hearing. This is a hit. And you know it. This time, it more than landed. The Democratic gallery came alive. Hands started to clap before catching themselves. A reporter who had been packing up sat back down. One of the younger members on the panel was nodding before he caught himself doing it. For a long, dangerous moment, the room tilted under Johnson, the way a courtroom tilts when the defense lands the one argument the jury has been quietly waiting to hear. And you could feel the morning start to slide back toward the man who had won a dozen mornings exactly like it. Somewhere behind the press tables, a voice said, "Damn! He's not wrong about the vote." And it was true. He wasn't. The censure had been party line. He had not been charged. For about 15 seconds, the most hated man in that room was also somehow the most convincing one in it. Johnson let the tilt happen. He did not fight it. He had learned a long time ago that the lawyer who panics when the room turns is the lawyer who loses it for good. So he waited until the clapping had nowhere left to go, until the silence got heavy again. And only then did he open a thin folder and lay 3 sheets on the table, one at a time, like a man dealing cards he already knows are good. "You said party line. So let me take the party clean out of it. 3 names. Tell me which one is a Republican." He touched the first. Michael Horowitz, Inspector General, appointed by a Democrat, kept on by a Republican. A career man. He found the 17 errors, not me. The second, the presiding judge of the surveillance court, a federal judge sworn to neither party. She wrote that the Bureau misled the court, not me. The third, John Durham, a special counsel built to be independent. He hunted your collusion for 4 years and came back empty, not me. He squared the 3 sheets into a small stack. It was the exact gesture Schiff had been making with his 1 page all morning, and no one in the room missed it. "You want this to be Republicans against you, Senator, because that's the only fight you've ever known how to win. But an Inspector General is not a Republican. A federal judge is not a Republican. And the truth doesn't carry a party card at all. That's the inconvenient thing about it. It just sits in the file, being true, waiting for somebody to read it out loud." The tilt came back level. The clapping never finished. Schiff tried to find the thread again. The Inspector General also found the investigation was properly predicated, which you, conveniently, properly predicated. Johnson nodded slowly. "And riddled with 17 errors. Both of those are in the same report. Senator, you like to read the first half to the cameras and leave the second half in the drawer. That's the whole trick, isn't it? Half a true thing," said with a straight face, "is worth more to you than a whole one. It always was." The senator did not answer. The pen had started moving again, parallel to the edge of the page, lining it up exactly square. And then Johnson went at him in short strokes, the rhythm of a cross-examination, the rhythm Schiff himself had used on 100 witnesses. "You released a memo calling that surveillance clean, yes or no?" In context, yes or no? Yes. The Inspector General found 17 errors in it. Yes or no? That report is more complicated than 17. Yes or no? A muscle moved in his jaw. Yes. You told the country the collusion was in plain sight. Yes or no? Yes. Mueller found no criminal conspiracy. Yes or no? Silence. Senator? Yes or no? Yes. 4 yeses, Johnson said, and stopped. And the stopping was worse than any speech. That's the whole hearing in your own voice. I didn't put one word in your mouth. You just heard a man answer yes 4 times to questions that bury his own argument. If you want more moments where they don't get to wriggle out, share this with one person who still thinks these people never get caught. The ranking Democrat on the panel, a member who had spent the morning with her arms folded and her face arranged into careful neutrality, reached forward and slid her own microphone an inch away from herself. She did not look at Schiff. She looked at the small stack of 3 pages, and she said nothing at all. Schiff saw it. The whole room watched him see it. He picked up the pen, clicked it again, then again, faster. You called this a hit, persecution, revenge. Johnson folded his hands on the binder. And it'll be fair to you, because that card has worked for a long time, and people walked in here this morning ready to believe it. He looked at the cameras. So let me say what I am not doing. I am not here because of your party. Not because of who you voted for, or who you pray to, or who you are. Those are the shields, and you reach for them beautifully. For 8 years, every time a man got close, you turned the whole thing around and made him the story. His motives, his donors, his church. You are the finest practitioner of that one move I have ever watched work. He leaned forward, and his voice dropped. And the gallery leaned in with him. But here is the trouble with that move, Senator. It only works on opinions. You can spin a motive, you can muddy an intention. What you cannot do, with all the talent in the world, is spin a number. 17 is 17 inches every party. A censure vote is a censure vote, and a sworn document with your own signature at the bottom is the one thing in this whole town that does not care, even a little, how good you are on a Sunday show. He let it settle. You taught this country that the man who calls you a liar must be the real villain. And it worked, because the men who came after you were partisans, and you could always make them the story. But I didn't bring you my opinion. I brought you your paper. I am not the story here. I never was. I'm just the man holding the file. Schiff spoke then, and it was almost too low for the microphone, and there was no pivot in it, and no camera in it, only one man, and the single opponent who hadn't flinched. You think they'll thank you for this? You think you've won something? No, Johnson said. Nobody wins a morning like this. I think a true thing is about to get said out loud. That's all I came for. There are files on everyone in this building. You understand that. You, of all people. I'm sure there are. Johnson did not look away. Then the men who spent their careers opening other people's files had better keep their own in order. You didn't, Senator. That's not my doing. That's just the page across the table. Something in Adam Schiff had begun to come apart, and the strange thing was how quiet it was. No outburst. A man in a beautiful suit moving a single sheet of paper a quarter inch at a time, squaring it and squaring it against the edge of the table, as if getting the angle exactly right would hold the rest of him together. His aide leaned in and whispered something fast and urgent, and for the first time all morning, Schiff did not seem to hear it. His eyes had not left the binder since the third tab. Near the back doors, a Capitol police officer who had stood easy all morning shifted his weight and folded his hands in front of him. No one had asked him to. He just read the room the way men in that job learned to. Senator, Johnson said quietly, you can stop arranging that page. Schiff's hand stopped. You've already read it, haven't you? You read it the second my staff carried this binder up here. You've known since the first tab where this ends. That's why you came out swinging at my church and my state and my voters in the first 4 minutes, not because you believed it, because you needed the room looking anywhere but at the table. If a man has ever made you feel like the truth was just one more thing, clever people argue about until everybody gets tired and it goes away, stay right here. Turn on notifications, because what the speaker reads next is the one thing in this hearing that cannot be argued with. Pick it up, Johnson said, and read it out loud. Schiff did not pick it up, so Johnson read it for him, and his voice carried no courtesy now, only the flat and terrible patience of a man reading a verdict. For 8 years, you stood in rooms like this one and read other people's secrets into the record. You were good at it. The careful pause, the page held up just so. Well, he slid one page out of the binder and laid it flat. This one's about you. So let's give it the same care you always gave everyone else's. He read, May of 2025. A referral from the Federal Housing Agency to the Justice Department. The subject is you. The allegation is that for years, from 2003 through 2019, you falsified bank and property records to get better terms on a home. And the Financial Crimes Division of Fannie Mae reached its own finding. Their words, a sustained pattern of occupancy misrepresentation across 5 separate loans. Something went out of Schiff's posture as he read it. Not all at once. It was the way a tent goes when one pole is pulled, a slow surrender of the shape of a thing. He reached for the pen and held it without clicking it. He nodded to the screen at the side of the room. 2 documents came up side by side, blown up big enough for the back row to read. This is a mortgage filing on a home in Potomac, Maryland, one of the richest suburbs in the country. On it, under oath, you swore it was your primary residence, your real home. For years, he let the cameras hold it. And this is a homeowner's tax exemption on a condo in Burbank, California, over the very same years. On it, you also swore it was your primary residence. He let the 2 pages sit there side by side, contradicting each other in the senator's own hand. Think about what each one buys you. The Maryland filing gets you the cheaper loan because banks reward the home a man actually lives in. The California exemption gets you a break on your property taxes because the state rewards the same thing. So you took the homeowner's discount in 2 states at once for the same years by swearing 2 different things to 2 different governments. There is no version of a calendar where both are true. One of those signatures is a lie, Senator. You just got to choose which government you lied to, depending on which one was writing the check. He turned to face Schiff directly. And this was not one form on one bad afternoon. This is the part that matters. 5 loans, Senator, 5. The same false fact carried forward year after year, refinanced and refinanced again, each time with your signature fresh at the bottom of it. Fannie Mae called it a sustained pattern. Sustained. That is a careful word, and they chose it on purpose. It means this was not a slip. It was a practice. He let the documents glow on the screen a moment longer. Now, here is the part I want every working family listening to understand, because this is the whole thing in one sentence. When you swear a house is the place you actually live, the bank charges you less, lower rate, kinder terms. So every time you signed that you lived in that mansion in Maryland, you reached into the system and took the better deal that an honest man 2 streets over couldn't get, because he only had the one house, and he told the truth about it. His voice didn't rise. It got harder and quieter, and the room leaned to hear it. Picture the man 2 streets over from that condo in Burbank. Has got one house. He told the truth about it, because it never crossed his mind to do anything else. He pays the rate an honest man pays. Has up at 5, has tired, has stretching a paycheck across a month. That's 3 days too long. And every April, he pays what he owes, because that's what you do. That man listened to you, Senator, for 30 years. He listened to you on his television, in that calm and serious voice, lecture him about fairness, about the rich gaming the rules, about paying your fair share. He let it hang, and the whole time you were talking to him, you were doing the exact thing you were warning him about. You had 2 houses, and you swore under oath that each one was your only home, so you could pay less than he paid. You weren't fighting the people who gamed the system. You were one of them. You just had a better voice and a nicer suit. And you used both of them to make a man like that trust you while you did it. He set the page down between them. 2 primary residences, both sworn, both filed in plain sight. The mirror landed, and the gallery made a sound, low and involuntary. The sound a crowd makes when it finally sees the whole shape of a thing, and Schiff somehow found one more breath of fight in him. I served a state 3,000 miles from where my family lived for years, he said, and the voice was steadier than it had any right to be. Occupancy designations are not simple for a man in that position. They are judgment calls. Accountants make them. Reasonable people land in different places. This is a referral, Mr. Speaker, from a political appointee dressed up as a crime. I have not been charged. I have not been charged because there is nothing here but paperwork and a president's grudge. For a moment, it had the old shape. A staffer exhaled. The thing was almost an argument. It would be a fine answer, Senator, if it were one form, 1 year, one honest mix-up. Johnson did not raise his voice. But you didn't list that Maryland house as a second home until 2020, the very year the questioning started. From 2003 until somebody finally looked, that mansion was your only home on paper, under oath, 17 years. He let the number land, the same number come back around, and the moment a reporter started asking, it quietly became your second one. An honest mistake doesn't wait 17 years and then correct itself the week the press shows up. That's not an accountant's judgment call. That's a man cleaning up. He straightened. He let the room hold still, then asked it plainly, the way you ask the last question you already know the answer to. It's a simple one, Senator, the kind you put to 100 witnesses. Is the home in Maryland your primary residence? Yes or no? Schiff's mouth opened, closed. Is the condo in California your primary residence? Yes or no? Nothing. It can only be one. You swore under oath it was both. So pick one right now. In front of these cameras, whichever you pick, the other oath becomes a lie on its face. Which is the lie, Senator? Maryland or California? He looked down at the page, then at the screen, then at nothing at all, and he did not answer, because there was no answer that did not finish him, and he knew it, and so did every soul in that room, and Adam Schiff began the pivot. Pure reflex, the move that had saved him 100 times. He turned the famous quarter turn toward the cameras and reached for the famous voice. The real question, the American people. The word cut out, not interrupted. Cut out like a wire pulled from a wall. He swallowed, and the microphone, turned up high, caught the dry click of it in his throat. The real question, he tried again, and this time the broadcast baritone, the smooth and certain instrument that had narrated the country's nightmares for 8 straight years, thinned to something reedy and small, broke on the second word and stopped. His hand went to the pen. The cap clicked fast now. 4 times. 5. A frantic little sound in an enormous, silent room. His other hand dragged the single-page square against the table edge and could not be made to be still. The real, nothing came. The most fluent man in Washington, in front of every camera in the country, with his own signature glowing on the screen behind him, opened his mouth and produced no sound at all. He tried once more, and this time there were no words in it, just a breath that caught halfway and turned into something smaller. He reached for the glass of water at his elbow, and his hand shook so badly the ice knocked against the side of it. A thin, bright sound in the silence, and he set it back down without drinking. The pen was on the table now. He had stopped clicking it. He had stopped squaring the page. His hands had simply quit. The way a thing quits when it finally understands there is nothing left to do, and no one moved to fill it. That was the mercy and the cruelty of it both. A heckler would have given him something to fight. A gavel would have given him cover. Instead, the room simply waited. 200 people holding still, letting the silence belong entirely to the man who had spent his whole life making sure it never could. On the Democratic side of the panel, a member looked down at her own hands. In the gallery, a woman who had worn a button supporting him turned it face down against her coat, without seeming to notice she was doing it. There it is. There's the moment. Hit that like button one more time right now, because you just watched a man who talked for a living lose the ability to finish a sentence. Johnson stood, the only time he stood all morning. At his full height, the room seemed to gather around him, and when he spoke, he did not speak to Schiff at all. He spoke past him, to the cameras, to the man 2 streets over from the condo in Burbank, to everyone who had ever been told to sit down and trust the serious voice. "You spent 8 years on every screen in America hunting a liar," he said. "You built your whole life on it. Every panel, every prime-time hour, every grave warning to the country about the fraud you swore was sitting right out in the open. And here is the thing, Senator. You were right. The fraud was in plain sight the whole time. You were just wrong all those years about exactly where it was sitting." He lifted the binder, the full weight of every tab in it, and looked at the man across the table, who could not speak. "The fraud you chased for 8 years was you." He did not say it loud. He did not need to. The line went out over the wires the way a struck bell goes out over a field, and somewhere in the silence after it, a single person in the gallery began to clap, then stopped, because it did not feel like a thing you clapped for. It felt like a thing you witnessed. The gavel came down, though no one could say afterward when the chairman had reached for it. "This panel," the chairman said, and his voice was not quite steady, "will refer the residency matter to the appropriate authorities and the whistleblower contact to the Ethics Committee. We stand in recess." It was the dry language of procedure, the words men use when they want to be careful, and in that silent room, it landed like a sentence. Schiff's lawyer was at his shoulder now, a hand on his arm, the universal posture of counsel telling a client to stop talking, except the client had already stopped. There was nothing left to stop. He reached for the single page, then seemed not to know what to do with it, and set it back exactly where it had been. Around the room, the morning came apart in small, undramatic motions, which was somehow worse than chaos. The ranking Democrat gathered her papers and left without a word to him, and her staff rose and followed, and the empty seats on her side simply stayed empty. One by one, members on his own side of the aisle found reasons to be elsewhere, and the ones who stayed kept their eyes on their papers, because there is a particular kind of cowardice that looks exactly like taking careful notes. The gallery that had laughed so easily in the first 4 minutes filed out quietly now, heads down, thumbs moving, passing the clip to people who would pass it to people, until, by lunchtime, there would be no one left in the country who hadn't seen the wire pulled from the wall. The activists who had lined up in the cold before dawn to watch a speaker get taken apart left without looking at the witness table at all. The reporters who had filed in to write one story were rewriting it in real time. And the ones who had walked out early were simply the ones who had understood it first. A staffer near the press table said it, not quite under his breath. He never denied it, he said. The way a man says a thing the instant he understands it at the very end. He never once said it wasn't true. He just couldn't finish the sentence. An older reporter beside him, one who had covered the impeachment years from a front-row seat, watched the senator gather his coat and said nothing for a while. Then, quietly, as much to himself as to anyone, he used to do this to people. The folder, the patient little questions. The wait. I watched him run a dozen witnesses into the ground that exact way. He shook his head slowly. Strange thing, watching a man drown in his own pool, and the phones did not stop on the screens of the people leaving. The morning was already eating the senator's afternoon. An evening appearance postponed by one line from a network that had booked him for years. A statement from a colleague who had defended him on a dozen Sundays, saying now only that the senator should be given the chance to answer the questions. which is the thing people say when they have decided to stop saying anything else. Not a stampede. Nothing so loud as that. Just the quiet, practiced motion of a town that always knows, before anyone announces it, which way a thing has tipped, and steps back from the edge in time. Johnson was already packing the binder into a plain leather bag. He had not smiled once all morning, and he did not smile now. A young aide leaned in and murmured that the clip of the last exchange was moving faster than anything the office had ever posted, faster than they could measure, and the speaker only nodded, the way a man nods at weather. But before he left, he stopped at the edge of the dais and turned back to the half-emptied room, and he said the thing the gallery would carry home and repeat longer than they'd remember any document. I want to say one thing to the people watching at home, because they're the ones this was really for. His voice was quiet again. The litigator's voice. The one that made a loud room go still for a long time. A lot of you have had the feeling that the truth turned into a kind of performance. That the serious people on your television decided facts were just opinions worn by whoever had the most power that week. That a man, if he was calm enough and clever enough and wore the right suit, could say nearly anything and never answer for it. He looked at the empty witness chair. That feeling is the thing I came here to end this morning. Not a man, a habit. The habit of believing the costume is the same as the character. It isn't. A federal judge is not a costume. A signature under oath is not a performance. 17 errors are not a difference of opinion, and no man, however gifted, gets to spend his life calling other people frauds and then act surprised the morning somebody finally opens his file. He paused, and his eyes moved over the half-empty room, the cameras, the place where the country was watching from the other side of the lens, and to the folks at home who felt for years like they were losing their minds, who watched the serious men say a thing with such certainty and felt in their gut it wasn't right, and got told they were the crazy ones for doubting it. The conspiracy theorists, the deplorables, the people too simple to understand. I want you to hear something this morning. Your gut was not broken. It was working fine the whole time. You were being lied to by men who were very, very good at it. And the only thing you ever got wrong was thinking you must be the problem. Because, surely, a man that calm wouldn't just make it up. He let that sit. He would. He did. And it took 8 years and a binder full of his own signatures to prove what a lot of you already knew. He lifted the bag. The file was there the whole time, he said. All anybody ever had to do was read it out loud. For a moment, no one answered him, because there was no one left on the other side to answer. The man who had always had the last word, who had built a career on having it, sat with his counsel's hand on his arm and said nothing. And the nothing was the loudest thing in the building. He did not look up when the speaker spoke. He looked at the page squared against the table edge, as if it might still be made to say something other than what it said. And then, unlike so many men in so many of these rooms, he made no show of his leaving. He walked out the main doors into the ordinary noise of an ordinary Tuesday in the Longworth building, and was gone before the room had finished deciding what it had just watched. Behind him on the witness table, a single sheet of paper sat squared perfectly against the edge, and a fountain pen lay beside it, capped and still. By 200, the senator's office released a statement. It used the familiar words, baseless, politically motivated, a revenge operation by an administration that had wanted him gone for a decade. It was a good statement, professionally written, and it would have worked the way everyone before it had worked, except for one thing. The country had already watched the video, and in the video, the most articulate man in American politics couldn't say any of it. The words on the page couldn't undo the silence on the screen. By evening, the clip of the failed pivot had been watched more times than any committee footage in the building's history. People who couldn't have named a single member of the panel watched a man reach for a sentence 3 times and lose it, and they understood it instantly. Cable coverage split along the old lines. His defenders insisted, correctly, that the residency question was unproven and the timing suspicious. His critics ran the side-by-side documents on a loop, but even the defenders kept their sentences short that night, and not one of them replayed the part of the tape where he tried to speak. In 1,000 living rooms, people who had spent years being called paranoid for not trusting the man simply watched the clip and said nothing, and felt the particular quiet of being proven right too late to enjoy it. In a quiet house in another state, a man named Carter Page, who had been watched 4 times over and never charged with anything, watched the segment about the 17 errors all the way through twice, then turned the television off and sat for a while in the kind of silence that never makes the news. On the legal channels, former prosecutors argued late over whether a sworn occupancy filing rose to a chargeable offense and reminded their audiences accurately that no charge had been brought against anyone. It was a fair point, and it did not matter much. What broke in that room was never going to be settled in a courtroom. It was the spell. A country can be argued out of a verdict. It cannot be argued out of a thing it watched with its own eyes. The speaker gave no interview and posted nothing. When a reporter caught him in a hallway late that night and asked what Head hoped to accomplish, he said only that a man had owned 2 homes and had sworn under oath that each one was his only home and that everything else had simply followed from there. 2 homes, 2 oaths, 1 truth. If a piece of this felt true to something you've been carrying for years, like it and subscribe so the next one finds you. And tell us in the comments whose file should get opened next.